And welcome back, everybody, to episode 42 of Around the Bases with Bubba and Mo. I am Bubba. You can find me on Twitter at BDintric. You can find the podcast on Twitter at Around Bases Pod. It is on YouTube. You can watch it there. You can watch it, listen to it on iTunes, Spreaker, SoundCloud. And before we get into the actual hot stove, let me introduce my co-host. As always, you can find him on Twitter at Boston_Mo. Mo, how we doing, man?
What's going on, Bubba?
Not much, man. It's wild that we have a hot stove after kind of saying how bleak it's been for a while. It's popping off. And it's kind of like half of me wanted to say, hey, do you want to record this on like Friday? Because there's going to be a lot of stuff going down here pretty soon. But let's get right into it. Before we get into the player analysis and all that good stuff, Brian Cashman, as much as I hate the Yankees, and I know you hate them more than I do, probably by a long shot, what he has been able to do at this ball club and in the moves we've seen and the moves that have been talked about coming up, he's a wizard to me, and he has got a 5-year extension. What are your thoughts on this?
It's a no-brainer. He's right behind, right behind Theo and Friedman in terms of money and in years and whatnot. I mean, he's been there for 20 years now. I know he was talking about that on MLB Network the other day. It makes complete sense. His rebuild job has been insane. I mean, the craziest part about it was 2016 with the Steinbrenners actually allowing him to sell off players when they technically were still in the wild card race, but not really. They knew they couldn't win it, sort of like the Royals this year. They knew they couldn't win it. I mean, a little different situations, but you get where I'm going with that. So from there on, he kind of snuck into that Stanton race and then pulled it off. I mean, he pulled that thing off. I think the thing to watch out for, and we don't have to rehash what we talked about last week in terms of the managerial situation, but we both think he botched it big time. Aaron Boone, in that stadium with that team, with that franchise, and all the history, being a first-time manager, not only first-time manager, but not being a bench coach or anything like that. And then he goes, in last year, Torey Lovullo, first-year manager, went and got Ron Gardenhire as his bench coach. He goes and gets Josh Bard, who has been with the Dodgers, and apparently he's a big analytical guy and a really smart guy and a manager down the road, which is all fine and dandy, but he hasn't managed either. He's been a bullpen coach the last year. So that's something to watch out for. But the overall point, I mean, Cashman's done an amazing job and he deserves everything he's getting right now.
Yeah, I don't have to say too much about it. I'm just thoroughly impressed with what he's done because I know for years I've given him flack, even in 2016, like you said, when he was getting rid of contracts and players. I'm sitting there going, what the heck is he doing? Like even a deal we'll talk about in a little bit that happened today with Headley, like that's genius. And it doesn't look like much, but it's just genius what he's doing. It's crazy.
Yeah, and like you said, we'll talk about that in a couple topics, but I think the biggest topic that's happened in the past few days, obviously, since they've gotten down to the winter meetings, is Giancarlo Stanton. And I just mentioned it. They got him, and they got him for really nothing. They got rid of Starlin Castro's salary. They traded a couple low-level prospects, and that's really all that Jeter wanted, was to get rid of that salary. And now Stanton has 3 years to figure out, hey, do I like New York? Do I not like New York? I put a link out there. I mean, ESPN wrote that big story about how it happened and kind of where it went. I guess let's first talk about, Bubba, what do you think this is in terms of a success for the Yankees, obviously, and how do you think it turns out?
Yeah, I'll keep this. We have two separate portions here, so I'll keep it separate. But just in terms of the trade alone, it's a gigantic success for the Yankees. When you look at that lineup, I know he strikes out a good amount, and Judge strikes out a good amount. Gary Sanchez strikes out a good amount. But I wrote about it for the website that you put those three guys together, they homered more than the Giants as a team last year. It is absolutely disgusting what this offense can be capable of doing. And the scary part is everyone's talking about Judge and Stanton together. Sanchez might be the best pure hitter out of the three of them. I don't think that's much of an argument, and it's just that terrifying. You have guys like Didi Gregorius. That lineup is just disgusting. It's going to be a nightmare for pitchers all throughout the season if they can stay healthy, and that's a big if with these guys. But it's really interesting. The more I've reflected on the return for the Marlins, yes, it sucks. You were never going to really get what you think you deserve for the 2017 reigning NL MVP. That's going to be very tough, period. Most of the deals we heard weren't great. They were better than this on paper. But they were hamstrung, and we'll get to that. They're getting one of the Yankees' top 10 prospects in Guzman. They're getting a youngster, Rafael Devers. I believe it's his cousin. Yeah, cousin. A left-handed shortstop. He's 18 years old, super young. I'm going to be hesitant to completely bomb on the Marlins because I want to see what they do with the rest of their deals. We've seen them do this before when they've traded the likes of Miggy and others. This just looks extra bad because of the way it's happening, is the way I'll phrase it. It just looks really, really bad. But I want to see the total return by the end of this whole offseason to kind of get a time frame, because we've seen this before with the Marlins, and they have, people forget, 2 World Series championships doing it like this. I'm not saying they're going to with this, but we can't completely bury things, because when they signed this contract, they already knew they weren't going to be able to pay him anyways halfway through it. They were going to have to trade him. It just, the way it happened is really poorly done.
Let's get your thoughts in terms of when you found out that he was not going to go to San Francisco.
I was wondering if that was going to be brought up.
You know it.
Let's just say, at first reaction, I heard the Cardinals were getting him. I was jumping like a 2-year-old. And then I found out the Giants were getting him, and I was crying like a 2-year-old that got like nothing that he wanted for Christmas. So it was bad. But then I started looking at it, and the Giants, we already have no farm system. So to deplete it completely with the decent talent we'd have would be just catastrophic for a team that's pretty much almost in rebuild mode as it is. I've almost gotten to the point now, I'd almost rather rebuild than reload. It's gotten to that point. I'll see what the boys, Sabian and Evans, those guys do. But my reaction when the Giants were getting them, I was very angry at the time. I've gotten better about it now.
Did you, when you saw they both weren't getting him, were you like, well, he's going to the Dodgers? Crap, it's over.
Oh, yeah, that was my initial reaction. Like, not the Dodgers. Again, they're already 5 straight NL West titles. I'll give them the 6th right now, and barring, Kershaw's arm falls off. They already have it without Stanton. And if they would have gotten Stanton, it was devastation. It would have been horrible, horrible.
I'm going to get your thoughts on this first. I have some thoughts on this in terms of how Jeter and his sort of businessmen handled this. I mean, obviously he's put in a tough spot with, he only put up like 20 to 25 million of his own money. But how do you think they handled this, and how is it going to go going forward?
It was handled probably as poorly as you could possibly handle a situation. We have to already get past the fact that they own the team, and if they can't afford players, why are they owning the team? That's like people's argument number one. Well, hey, MLB thought they had enough money, or they let it happen. Whatever they did, and it's that part's over. There's nothing we can do about that. And like I said earlier, when this deal was made with Stanton, when he was 25, they knew they weren't going to be able to afford him. That was a different regime, sure. But Jeter already said he was trading them before they even bought the team. So this shouldn't be a surprise. Now, the way they did it, when I find out that, when we talked last week and it was the Cardinals and the Giants, they made it sound like that was on his list. And then when you find out, no, his list was the 4 teams that made it to the league championship series, and that was it. And they were never in the realm of options at first. That really makes me wonder, what the heck was Jeter thinking? Like, it was a poker game, and apparently I need to go play poker with Jeter because it's going to be awesome. Maybe his girlfriend can play too. I don't know. Or his wife now. But Giancarlo called their bluff, and he put them in a bad spot. And they handled it as poorly as you could. And the worst part is, it's like, I don't even count the D. Gordon trade. This is their first trade, big trade, and they butchered it very badly. What do you think?
I think the biggest thing here is I don't think there was communication with Giancarlo from the start. And I think that's what cost them what maybe could have been a better deal from the Giants and the Cardinals, because once they basically said you're going to be a Marlin for life if you don't accept one of these deals, he went and threw out there the 4 best teams in the whole in baseball. It was pretty much what he did, which, like you said, called their bluff. And then they really had no leverage to do anything. They really didn't. And that's what cost them there. I kind of feel for Jeter in a way, because when the guy that basically threw a $500 million out to buy this team tells you to cut salary, you really don't have a choice and you have no leverage to do anything. Me and you both knew that the guy was probably telling him that. So there's a big issue there with how Jeter handled it. But at the same time, he's not in a great position there as the CEO of that team. And I think not only that, but people are pissed at how he's handled, the Jeff Conine, Andre Dawson situation, the different situations with the scout that was having his like a kidney transplant, and he like fired him when he was in surgery or whatever it was, and then countless other things that Jeter has done. It seems a lot like a guy that really doesn't know what he's doing and has been kind of thrown to the wolves right off the bat, which clearly he has been, and that's what he wants. And baseball wanted him in the game, so they gave him the team. Simple as that. And you have to see what happens next. I know Ozuna, said that he would still stay. Yelich is pissed. He wants out. So it's a tough situation, and we'll get into a lot more of that a little bit later.
Yeah, and one last thing here is I know it's not Jeter's deal. Even when he was with the Yankees, he was always kind of the quiet guy, didn't want to really be in the spotlight. That was never his thing. But to not be at the winter meetings when you're supposed to be the face and the voice of the situation, when every other GM on the planet is there, they all have rooms there. Literally, with all of the negativity that came from this deal, all he had to do was host one press conference and just say a couple things to kind of, tide this, like just calm it down a little bit, not even justify it. Just, this is where we're coming from. This is what we're doing. Kind of give like your fans an idea of what's in store, but this is like the end game here. Give them something. To not show up, and then he's on TV last night at the Dolphins-Patriots game. He lives in Florida. The thing's in frickin' Orlando. He has started this job off worse than probably anybody possibly could on the face of the planet.
Oh, he got booed at the Heat game the other day, and then he's at the game last night, which again is another story for another day with that game last night. But
I won't bring that up.
But it's not a big deal to us. We lose there almost every year, so and I think we end up okay. So you only beat us by 7 and we sucked, but that's neither here nor there. Derek Jeter's handled this really, really poorly, and it's going to take. I mean, I know some people have said 3 to 4 years. This could be a 5 to 7 year rebuild. I mean, it really, really could, unless they somehow make that TV money and decide to invest in a couple years with some smart free agents. But you just never know.
Yeah, and like I said, this will be fun to look back on in like February or March when all their deals are done. We can sit there and really analyze the prospects and kind of get more of a game plan on what they have coming up, because the weird part is they still have a lot of talent there. You have Bohr, you have Ozuna, you have Yelich, who I know you said is pissed, and he is. He wants out. He's angry. You have Real Muto. There is talent there. It's just a matter of how much is there come spring training. So that'll be the interesting part. Let's move on, though. The Yankees were at it again today. I kind of hinted – we hinted at it earlier. Cashman made a deal trading Chase Headley and his $13 million left on his deal to free up space, which – going to get used, and a pitching prospect. He spent some time in the majors. He's kind of a minor leaguer, not a prospect anymore, and Brian Mitchell for Jabari Blash, who's basically a mini Giancarlo, but a little worse, I'd say. But he's a monster that hits bombs and strikes out a ton. Might not even make the 40-man roster, it looks like, because they have no space for him. Literally a salary dump. What are your thoughts here?
Just Brian Cashman being Brian Cashman, just being a genius lately. I mean, I'm really jealous of the Yankees right now with how he's just just crushing Dombrowski and the rest of this league. I kind of like this move for the Padres, to be honest with you. I mean, Brian Mitchell, there's something there in the stats and in the minors. I mean, in AAA of last year, I mean, he struck out 9.5 guys per 9. His walk rate was down, didn't allow homers. His ground ball rate was like 55%, and he with a 3.25 ERA and a 2.18 FIP. But then he gets to the majors and he's a reliever and he doesn't strike anyone out, and his walk rate doubles and his ERA doubles. So, and that happened in 2016 as well. So it's a tough situation. But we've seen the Padres, and specifically AJ Preller, that weasel that he is, but he's still in the league somehow. They've done this with other guys, whether it's Trevor Cahill, whether now it's going to be Travis Wood, and then they're going to try to do this with Mitchell. They kind of a buy low candidate to really pitch well in that ballpark. And I think that's something to look out for. And he's going to be a real deep sleeper in terms of fantasy. I mean, he may not get drafted. He may be a stream guy to start, but that's a guy to look out for there in San Diego.
Yeah, and it's a great point because we saw how they handled the rotation last year. They were moving guys in and out, youngsters, and trying things out, and the bullpen too. Like all their pitchers, they were very flexible, wanting to try things out because they're rebuilding the right way. We've mentioned how much we've liked their rebuild, and that's a reason why I like the Chase Headley factor. He's a former Padre. He loves it in San Diego. He loves the area. This might be his last year in baseball, and he was decent for the Yankees the last few years. He wasn't bad by any means, and when you're in a rebuild, I love it, and I've emphasized it many times. I love having that kind of veteran. That's not the loud negative veteran, but a Chase Headley type. He's going to be quiet, but I guarantee you're going to be able to tune into a Padres game, and he'll be sitting on the bench when a player makes a bad play, and he'll go talk to him, and he's going to help him out. And there's going to be a lot to be said about that because this team, I know we like what they have coming in another couple years. He could be a big factor in kind of making these guys mature a little bit. And, for $13 million for a year when they're flexible with money and still doing their thing, I don't hate this at all. You mentioned the Brian Mitchell part. Jabari Blash wasn't going to be a part of the program. They tried it. They have a congested outfield. If they go and get Hosmer, they're moving Myers to the outfield. They don't need Blash anymore. And Blash is 28 for crying out loud. So he's pretty much run his course. I think it's a really good move for both sides. They both get what they want. It's pretty good. And it's the kind of quiet, sneaky moves that completely go under the radar but have huge impacts later on.
Yeah, I completely agree with that one. I mean, Headley's been fine. He wasn't going to play, really anymore. It was either going to be Gleyber Torres or they could go get a Todd Frazier now. And like I said, for the Padres, I like it. The only thing that the rumors I'm hearing is they could be in for Eric Hosmer, and I don't know if that's Scott Boras throwing that out there to gather some more teams in to get the money up a little bit. That would be the wrong move. But yeah, I like it for Padres, and obviously it's a slam dunk for the Yankees to really open some more money up to sign God knows who.
Definitely.
And now we go back to the Marlins and really to the Mariners. Jerry DePaul, Dealin' Jerry is probably his new name. That guy loves to make trades. He traded for D. Gordon. And everyone says, well, where's D. Gordon going to play? They have Robbie Cano. Well, Jerry DePaul moved him to center field without his approval. He did not contact him, did not contact his agent. This was his thing the whole time. And D. Gordon kind of took it as it is and said, I'm going to transition to this. Not an easy transition to going from second base to center field, especially in Safeco Field. What'd you think about this deal?
See, I love this deal for the Marlins. This is why I want to see the end result. This Nick Neidhart kid, he finished the year in Double-A. He was their top pitching prospect in the Mariners organization. And I know the Mariners have been bashed this whole time saying, well, your organization's prospects stink. Yes, they're not great. This kid's good. I actually got to see him when he came to San Jose. He's got really good stuff, kind of a smaller build, but a good young arm. I think he's going to fit in nicely and give him another couple years probably. But he could be a sneaky nice piece here. And then this Torres and Duggar, both young guys, shows potential, especially this Torres guy, super young out of Dominican. He could be something really nice, but a long, long ways away as we know how that goes. It's interesting because, with Gordon came $1 million in international signing, and everyone thought, oh, there's your Ohtani budget. Well, we'll talk later how that didn't work out. But the D. Gordon part, I love adding him to an offense that's already pretty loaded. You got Nelly Cruz, you got Cano, they got Ryan Healy now. The list goes on of really productive bats in that lineup. But yeah, put him in center field. Sure, he's fast. Sure, he can cover ground. His arm is horrible. People make fun of Billy Hamilton. Billy Hamilton's got a really good arm. This isn't even Billy Hamilton Jr. in center field. This is bad. I feel like they should have traded for Billy Hamilton if they wanted a center fielder, but I think they weren't getting that $1 million back. And DePoto kind of he chased the dragon and he lost. I think is what pretty much came up here. I think Gordon will be fine. It's just not what was intended.
Yeah, I agree. But we both thought he was going to the Mariners. I think everyone thought he was going to the Mariners once they got all that money. But at the same time, Hey, Jerry DePorto better go buck wild this international signing period with all that money, because it's got to go somewhere, and he possibly could rebuild that farm system pretty quickly while trying to win at the same time. They're gonna have to find another starter now. I'll tell you that much as you get into the next topic.
Yeah, we'll go straight into that. Shohei Ohtani, the sweepstake is finally over. He signs with the Anaheim Angels. I'm always going to call them Anaheim. There's only one LA team, but the Anaheim Angels. And I love the deal. I love where he's going. They're going to let him, hit and pitch. He definitely, I think, their top arm in the rotation, even though roster resource has him second behind Garrett Richards. It's going to be interesting to see. They said if he hits, it's only going to be DHing, so that's going to affect Pujols. There's a lot to go here, but I'll get your thoughts first before I say some more.
Oh, it's a slam dunk for the Angels. I mean, this tells Trout that obviously they want to win. The money thing isn't huge because they don't have to pay him a ton for at least a few years. I mean, Artie Moreno obviously does not care about money. He spends a ton of money, and he'll pay that $20 million posting fee. That has nothing to do with the luxury tax. So it's a huge, huge signing for them. Along with Upton, I read something, somewhere that they're going to play Pujols around 50-ish games at first base. That doesn't seem right to me. The guy can barely walk as a DH, so I don't understand that whole thing. So they're going to let him hit. Mike Scioscia is a weird manager, and he loves small ball, or at least he used to. So he could probably figure this out because he loves just crazy different situations and squeeze plays, and he's an old school guy. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they handle this situation. Most importantly, how Ohtani handles the situation. This is something that we've never seen. Madison Bumgarner is probably the closest thing, and when I mean closest thing, I mean they don't pinch hit for him. He hits as long as he possibly can, and there are times where he pinch hits over the rest of your bats because your bench is terrible.
Yep.
I mean, it is terrible, Bubba, most of the time, right?
Not arguing.
Yeah, so this is what we're talking about here, and I can't wait to see it. I'm going to be watching a ton of those games. I'm going to stay up and watch a ton of those games, obviously, and I think a lot of people are. I really am excited for it, and I think it puts them, right behind the Astros there. The Astros have been very quiet. There's not much that they're doing. I mean, they're never going to be a top 10 in terms of payroll. So they haven't really done anything either. So I just can't wait to watch it. I really can't.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Like you said, the Pujols going to first base, which he used to be a Gold Glove first baseman. Keyword used to be. As you mentioned, he can't move. It's really weird because CJ Cron, who they have at first, this young kid, he's finally come on the scene and looked really good last year and actually in playing time, especially against left-handed pitching. Maybe that's when they rest Ohtani. I think what it's going to be is if they stick kind of to the Japanese program, he'll pitch once a week. They've talked about the 6-man rotation. In Japan, the 2 games prior to his start, he'd sit. He'd pitch his bullpen and then rest that game, rest the next game, and pitch. That could be the days. So those 3 days could be DH days for Pujols. It'd be real interesting to see how this works out. And then, like, reports came out how fast he is. Now they're going to let him run. Do you want your pitcher, your every report comes out saying he has Cy Young caliber stuff, but his bat's mediocre. Do you want to risk a Cy Young arm on the bases? I don't. But Scioscia's goofy. So who knows what he's going to do. I can't wait to watch this play out. And one thing I am going to say, opening day next year, they come to Oakland. I know where I'll be on opening day. I will not be in San Francisco. I'll be in the East Bay watching Shohei Ohtani and company. I cannot wait for that. Absolutely can't wait.
Well, if they have him slotted 2,
I'll go both days.
Well, okay, go both days because he ain't hitting on opening day unless they have a day off in between. He's not doing that.
Scioscia's crazy. You never know. I'm just saying if they follow protocol, who knows what Scioscia does? You know how much people are going to be screaming for him to play day 1?
Oh, I know. What if he sucks at hitting? Like what? And then in July they say we're just you're a starter and that's it. And here and there you can pinch hit for us if we need you. That's not going to sit well with his camp.
Well, you know what's really wild about him? Because of this whole structure, people forget, yes, he's a superstar, but we have to remember he got paid what he got paid because he's technically a minor leaguer. He has options to go down to the minors if he struggles. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that is an option.
It certainly is an option, but that's not happening, Bubba. So you don't have to worry about that.
I hope not. I hope to God it doesn't. We've seen weirder stuff. That's all I have to say.
I know. I hear you. I hear you. All right, let's go to the Cubs. Before their bigger signing, we're going to talk about Tyler Chatwood. Right at the beginning of sort of winter meetings, a few days before it, I like this signing for the Cubs. I think it's a nice little, low risk, high reward situation we got going on here with Chatwood. What do you think about it?
I absolutely love it. I honest to God, I know I've mentioned it many times. I've slowly been embracing the stats things, aka teaching myself, because I was just the guy. I was more on what I see, this and that and the other. I didn't know it. In the last year or so, I've been learning it. I am baffled by how many, no offense to anybody, stat geeks out there that aren't in favor of this. It's like 60-40 aren't in favor, it seems like. I am shocked by this. I know they say you can't, half his starts are in Coors and you can't just discredit half his starts. Well, I'm going to. I'll at least take it with a grain of salt. Outside of Coors Field, this guy's been amazing. I think you're getting a steal for him for like a number 3 or 4 in a rotation. You're paying a guy $13 million a year. The going rate on this market, that's a deal to me. If I'm missing something, I don't know. But a guy that can get ground balls like he can get strikeouts. He actually throws way harder than people think. I am concerned he's already had 2 Tommy John surgeries. That's not a good look. But he's 27 years old. He's young. He's going into a very good pitcher's ballpark. Can you imagine him on a Wrigley day with the wind blowing in? My goodness. This is the perfect storm. Personally, I'd rather have him than Jake Arrieta, and you're getting him at a massive discount right now. Maybe I'm just too high on him. Let me know if I am. I think it's a great move for a team that has Lester, Quintana, and Hendricks. So he's the 4th starter, not even the 3rd starter in the rotation.
Yeah, I like it in that way. The only thing I'm worried about, and we'll get to that in Brandon Morrow in a second, is, the Cubs, they won that World Series. Thank God they did, because we said it last week. I'm very worried about this team and this staff and sort of how it's being built a little bit. It seems like they're getting old quicker than we all expected. I mean, other than Rizzo and Brian, obviously, and they're studs, absolute studs. But Schwarber took a while. Russell's, he had the whole, thing with his wife, so that might have affected him a little bit. I know other guys, I think, Paul Sporer is very high on Russell still, I think, in terms of how the player he can be. Zobrist got old quickly. Haywood is Haywood. It's kind of worrisome to see what they're doing with this squad. And having said that, Chatwood, like you said, he's the number 4 guy. So it's a low-risk situation. You have to hope his arm stays healthy. But, yeah, you look at his, home-away splits, I'd throw it completely out. A lot of guys don't do that. But where it was so drastic, I don't know how you can't throw it out.
That's my point.
Yeah, it's like I said, low risk, high reward, and I think we're leaning towards the reward part than the risk part, and I think it's something to watch out for sure. But I'm still worried about the whole build of that organization, and we can get into that in a second.
Well, yeah, and let's just put it this way: they lose Arrieta and they lose Lackey, so they need 2 starters. Now, say they go and get Cobb, like all reports are saying, and obviously something can change. So now you have Lester, Quintana, Hendricks, Chatwood, and Cobb. Doesn't that sound a lot better than the rotation they had last year that we criticized a ton?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, 100%, yeah.
That's why I'm just baffled by, people saying how bad this was. I don't get it at all. And I know, and we'll get right into it. The Cubs, they went and signed Brandon Morrow coming off his outstanding 2017 season with the Dodgers. Sure, the first half was very rocky, an ERA close to 5 or above 5, I believe. But his second half was phenomenal. He did not give a home run up all season. He's changed his pitch repertoire. In the postseason, he had a heavy workload, had the bad Game 5 in the World Series, but I blame Dave Roberts more than him for that one. He should not have been out there. It was very obvious. He's not officially the closer. They're still shopping for another arm. He's joining the likes of Carl Edwards Jr., Strope, Montgomery, and Wilson. Not a bad 4 guys to join. they'll add another arm. What's your thoughts on this Morrow thing? Can he take that step to closer, or should they really go look for a dependent closer?
I love what I saw from Brandon Morrow last year, especially in the playoffs, and how he just battled and his fast. There was life on his fastball. I mean, he always was a top prospect as a starter, but always had arm issues. I hate this move for the Cubs. If this is the guy that you're going for as the closer for the Chicago Cubs, I hate it because of the arm troubles and because of how Joe Madden uses his closers. Now, maybe during the regular season, they can make it work where Justin Wilson pretends he knows how to pitch again, which is a really, really big development for them too. I mean, they traded for him with control. I really think expecting him to be the closer. I really believe that when they did trade for him, they were expecting him to go and be the setup guy last year for Wade Davis and then turn into the closer. So they'll have, for the 4th year in a row, a new closer. And that hasn't worked out. Now they have to go to Brandon Morrow, and maybe they still go the Justin Wilson situation there. But I'm worried about it because Joe Madden will run you to the ground. And he's shown it with Chapman the year before. And then Davis last year. He will pitch you until your arm falls off. And it's nothing different than what Dave Roberts did last year to Brandon Morrow. But Brandon Morrow was a setup guy. He wasn't the closer. I think it's a different mindset. He hasn't done it before. And I worry about overuse. And I would hope that Theo is going to go get 1 or 2 more impact relievers to really, really have some depth in that bullpen. I'm very, very worried about it.
Yeah, and I agree with that. There's always been concern with the way Joe uses his pen. And that's why I want to call him the closer for now, but I'm hesitant for the fact they gave him the deal, that the 2 years with a chance at a third. When you look at Davis was there for 1 year, Chapman was there for 1 year. Literally, they want your arm to fall off and we'll just replace you. So it gives you the feel that he's not going to be the closer, or they have Justin Wilson, they have Brandon Morrow, they go get another arm, and maybe Joe Madden treats it like the Nationals did after they made all their trades and they rotate through Doolittle and Matson and those guys, and they have 3 closers to make one. Maybe they go that route so they're not burning everybody, but with Joe Madden, who knows what the heck he's going to do ever.
And I hate that closer by committee situation. Sounds like Mickey Callaway's been doing that in New York too for the Mets, from what I read a couple of things today, and we can talk about that maybe next week. But yeah, I'm not a fan of it. And, the Cubs, if I was a Cubs fan, I would be really worried that the Cardinals, who are in on everybody, you've got the Brewers, who are locked and loaded with their farm system. And if Jimmy Nelson gets healthier quicker than they think, and they go get a starter, that team's there too. And then Pittsburgh's, boring, as I've said many times. I mean, Cubs still have the most talent in that division, but those 2 teams could leapfrog them real quick.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Speaking of the Cardinals, they went and signed Luke Gregerson. I think it was 2 years, $11 million, something like that. Kind of underwhelming, but he's been good before, and maybe a move to the NL in a different, situation can help him be, the good Luke Gregerson again. What do you think?
To me, this is a 7th, maybe 8th inning arm. They got him for $5.5 million a year. It's not horrible. It's actually cheaper than we saw, Mike Dunn's of the world and other guys go last year. So maybe jumping out in front of this train's a good idea. He did have his ups and downs, like you said, but we have seen him be very formidable in the past. So maybe he finds it there. Pitchers in St. Louis seem to figure things out more often than not. His name's slipping my mind, but the big boy Broxton even pitched well there, and he was horrible for a while. So you never know, but it's nothing fancy, really.
But he was horrible last year and was one of the best relievers in baseball from 2011 to 2016.
Yeah, so maybe he figures it out, but he's definitely not their closer.
Oh, I don't think he'll be their closer. No. I thought they got him maybe for a setup guy, a 7th inning guy. I didn't expect. I mean, maybe there's something different that I didn't read, but I didn't expect him to be their closer by any means.
No. I agree. I thought that's what you're saying. No, I think he's 7th or 8th inning arm at best. At best.
Yeah, and that's why I think this could be a good situation for him, and especially with the money that are flying out there for relievers, I think that's, I mean, 5.5 is pretty cheap for them.
Big time. Very, very, very cheap. Let's go to the Rocky Mountains. The Colorado Rockies bring home a catcher, which will pretty much, he started his career there, had a huge year for the D-backs last year, and now he gets a deal that's with an option in 2020, couple years. Man, did they make the 2-year, $15 million? I was Kelly Castillo. I'm butchering this. But about $8.5 million guaranteed to Chris Iannetta. Really good deal, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on this one?
Love his deal. I mean, the guy gets on base. I mean, he strikes out a good amount, but he had career high. Well, the highest ISO he's had since 2009 when he was back with the Rockies. So the guy had a great year. I mean, he batted 254, 354 OBP, 17 homers. This is a great deal for the Rockies. I know they've had, Murphy and Walters, and they've got a few other guys up there, but clearly they weren't satisfied with it. They weren't probably going to bring Lucroy back, even though he was decent in the month and a half that he was there. I like this signing for them. I mean, there's not a lot of risk here. He's a decent defensive catcher. So I like this signing a lot. Not much to say other than that.
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet. I love it. I think a lot of it's going to be with, you mentioned the Murphys and the Walters, who they like the young kids. But with the young pitching staff they have, that's a little more important to have a veteran catcher back there. I know he's not the greatest defensive catcher, but the experience will go a long ways. He can drop bombs, as we know. He crushes left-handed pitching. There's a lot of lefties in the NL West, so he sticks in the NL West. And I think the biggest factor will be, where does Bud Black put him in the lineup? That's one thing your boy Lovello did a ton in some games, 4th, 6th. He rotated him out to be in good situations to take advantage of the pitcher he was facing. Now, if Bud Black could do that, this is a steal. This is a great move. Put him in front of Nolan Arenado certain days and stuff. This could be tremendous. I like it a lot. Cheap deal, too. It's beautiful.
Yeah, completely agree there. Cheap. Another cheap deal, and signing to sort of a young staff there is Mike Fiers signed with the Tigers. 1 year, $6.5 million. Really had an up and down year last year. He was really only good in June and July, and the rest of the months, especially the second half in terms of August and September, he was terrible. And in September, he just didn't start at all because Morton had come up, and then Peacock had kind of emerged a little bit, and they could keep him in the rotation. So he lost his job there. But yeah, Mike Fiers, I mean, what do you got on him?
Not much. He's so tilting. Going into the year last year, we're all excited because he's a fly ball pitcher in that ballpark. Started out horrible. Then he had like a month and a half where he was outstanding. He was great, and you thought maybe he figured it out. Yeah, then he was garbage, didn't even pitch much at all. Went to the bullpen. I think it's a good place for him in Detroit. Good pitchers ballpark. There's a couple good ballparks in that division to pitch in. Some veteran, quote unquote leadership in the rotation. And, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't cost them a ton, and they can bring up someone from the minors as they keep the rebuild going. If he does string together a couple good months, you trade him at the deadline. This works out well for the Tigers.
Not much.
What's up?
No, not much to say there either.
Last signing we'll talk about this week, as there'll be many more next week. The Phillies, they're reuniting with Mr. Pat Neshek, 2 years, $18 million with another option in the back end there. Loves going back to Philadelphia to go get traded somewhere else. I think it's a great move. What are your thoughts on this one?
Great move, Philadelphia. If you're Pat Neshek and you're, 38, 39 years old, yeah, you're 37, he'll be 38, in the middle of next season. Don't you want to go somewhere and win? I mean, I don't – that's just my thoughts on that. Wouldn't you think that?
Yeah, I'm surprised by it. I'm wondering, does he have like a second family there? Does he just enjoy Philly cheesesteaks? There is something to it. It's a great point, because at his age, there's a lot of contenders that would have given him close to that, maybe more, maybe a little less, for 2 years to be a solid 7th, 8th inning ground ball, bases loaded, come in and get a ground ball for his guy in a heartbeat. So it is interesting. He had a great year last year, and he always gets traded to contenders. So maybe that's his thought. I'm going to go make my money, go get traded, have some fun with some kids in the meantime, because he likes the way the rebuild's going. I don't know. Very interesting question.
Yeah, maybe the rebuild is going quicker, and they told him that they're going to do this, they're going to do that, and also maybe he's dominant again, and they trade him for more because he'll a team will have him under control for $8 million or whatever it is. So that was what my thought was. I mean, I was big on him at the trade deadline. I wanted him badly for the Red Sox, and they went and got Addison Reed, which I was fine with. But I was big on this guy. He had a very, very good year last year. I mean, it's his best year he's had, since 2014 with the Cardinals, where he pitched almost 70 innings with a 1.87 ERA and a 2.37 FIP. Last year, probably the best year of his career, to be honest with you. I mean, he had the highest WAR of his career for sure, 2.5, and when he had 1.9 in 2014 with the Cardinals. So I'm more surprised on it on his side rather than the Philly side. Obviously, it's great for the Phillies and their bullpen. I think when we talk about it in the season preview coming up in a couple months, when we do get to spring training, their bullpen's a little sneaky there. I like their bullpen.
It's very sneaky. Well, that wraps up this week's version of the Hot Stove. Like we said, there's tons of rumors going on. A lot will be discussed next week. But let's get into our interview for the week. Pretty awesome interview we got coming up here, talking Miami Marlins, because there's a ton to talk about in Miami. So we have Craig Mish joining us from SiriusXM. Hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll be right back. Really, really good stuff there. Can't wait to see where the Marlins, I guess, rest of the winter leads Mo. But only time will tell there. Let's get into our season in reviews. We got 3 reviews this week, and they're all playoff teams. Or 2 of the 3 where one just missed. Let's kick it off with the Minnesota Twins, 85-77, sneaked into the wild card after a 100-loss 2016 season. Do you think they overachieved, or is this the sign of things to come in Minnesota?
Definitely overachieved this year, but clearly based off some performances by some guys, I mean, they've got a good core to build off of here. I mean, that offense was very, very good this year. And I think the big thing is, I mean, they got one more year of Dozier, so they have to address that, but they also have one more year of Mauer. So that Mauer contract is coming off the books. And then the other thing is Miguel Sano had a good year. He got hurt a little bit. They have to, hope that he gets healthy for the season. It looks like he will. I think sort of a 6 to 8 week time period in the middle of November. So hopefully he's plenty healthy and ready to go in the middle of January. And then it's Byron Buxton. I mean, that's the guy. I mean, we talked to our guy, Brandon Warren a couple weeks ago about him. He loves him. Who doesn't? Can he build off that second half finally? I mean, the year before we asked that. We ask it again this year. I think this year was much better than the year before. Obviously, he's going to strike out a lot. That's always going to happen. But defensive ability was always there. Can he build off that second half in terms of his average, his power, and just getting on base?
Yeah, I really hope he continues to take that next step. The talent is ridiculous with Buxton. Could be a lot of fun to watch there. Jose Barrios, another young kid that they have there, really looked outstanding. He started the year poor again, went to the minors. Like it was a replay of 16 all over again, but then he comes back up, and he was filthy, like at least 3 out of 4 starts, just pure nastiness. Is he really going to be that guy, that front-end guy they need?
Yeah, I think he is, and obviously he has to be. I think they were counting on Buxton, they were counting on Sano, and they were counting on Barrios to really upstart this franchise back to where they were in the early 2000s, where it was just every year they were making the playoffs, and they were sort of retooling. They were never one of the top, payrolls in baseball. They were always retooling. They had Johan Santana. They had, Liriano for a few years there when he was straight filth. But, Barrios finally figured it out. We were wondering when he was going to really bring that AAA stuff to the majors, and he finally got there. The velocity was around 94 in terms of his fastball. That slider is just straight filth, or the sinker was straight filth, and curveball is really, really good as well. So I'm big on this guy. I hope he can continue going forward. Whether he's an ace or not, I think he's got ace stuff, but he definitely can be a part of be at the top of that rotation for many years to come.
And last but not least, what do you think's next for the Twins as they continue their rebuild and actual contention in the Central?
Rebuild and retool that bullpen. I mean, they traded off Kinser. They traded off a couple other guys. Glenn Perkins, unfortunately, has to retire, I believe. So he's all done, and that's too bad. He had a couple good years there for him. So I think number one, they've got to get a couple bullpen guys. They definitely need another starting pitcher. Whether they go for the Darvish route, I think that might be a little bit too high. It could be more of an Alex Cobb, a Lance Lynn type. Can Kyle Gibson continue what he did in that second half? Because he pitched really well in the second half. Could be 4 or 5 starter for him, and that would solidify that rotation a little bit, because they were kind of, throwing crap at the wall with the 4 and 5 starters. But if Irvin Santana, and again, I expect a regression based off of the peripherals that are there, and then Barrios at the top, and then if Gibson can pitch well and you get one starter here and you kind of fool around with the 5th, that's where they need to focus on. There's not much there offensively. I mean, they could go get sort of a DH type for cheap. I mean, maybe a Mike Napoli would be cheap, good for that clubhouse with a lot of young guys. I mean, he's a great clubhouse guy, as we've seen in Texas and in Boston and other places. So that's one name to look out for. I don't think they'll go get a Carlos Santana or a Lomo or anything like that. I think it'll be really, really cheap, because that offense is legit. I mean, it really is, especially if Buxton continues what he's doing and Sano gets healthy. So, I like this team a lot. They got to focus on the pitching, obviously. Yeah,
no, I'm excited to see, because, the Royals aren't going to be there. The White Sox, they'll be better, not quite there. Tigers are going to be bad. So I think the Twins could make this interesting with the Indians next year.
Yeah, I completely agree. There'll probably be a little bit of regression for a few of the guys, as we've mentioned, but yeah, for sure. Let's go to the NL Central. My Milwaukee Brewers, my second team because of Travis Shaw, and I just love their prospects. I love their pitching. I love Craig Counsell. Speaking of Travis Shaw, big years from him, big year from Domingo Santana. Do you think those guys can continue it going into 2018?
Oh, that's the $1 million question. It's funny, Domingo Santana has been mentioned, as trade bait, but no one's biting yet. So the fact they're willing to deal him, well, I guess makes some sense when you got guys like Lewis Brinson and others knocking on the door. But it'll be interesting to see what they do here. I think Shaw definitely, at least power-wise, can be just as productive. The guy has just insane power, ballpark ball's going to fly out of. I love Domingo Santana. I think they both could be really, really good. Get Braun out of the way. That could be huge. But I like those two a lot. I think there's a lot to like with those two. As good a years, maybe not, but I think they both could have pretty solid seasons. They both regressed a bit in the second half. I think they might put 2 good halves together this year.
Pitching staff, I mean, it had a great year. I mean, you had, the bullpen with Corey Knebel. Josh Hader came up as one of their top prospects and was very good. Jacob Barnes and among others. And then Chase Anderson, Zach Davies was good. Even Brent Suter had a few good starts. And then, Jimmy Nelson really came into his own until unfortunately hurt his shoulder. Just talk about a few of those guys, and who do you see continuing, and then who do you see regressing back to the means a little bit?
Well, first, it's a shame that Slip and Jimmy got hurt, and who knows when or if he'll be back in 2018. I doubt he does, but you never know. But Chase Anderson, he's not going to be as good as he was. I don't see him being that good. He's still going to be very good, though. Very, very good. He's going to be good. Zach Davies, I got no problem with. Suter's average at best. But it'll be interesting to see what they get with, like, Junior Guerra, who was pretty good a couple years ago. Got hurt this last year, wasn't much of anything. They had Brandon Woodruff, a youngster, one of their top prospect pitchers, come up. He was okay. The one I'm real curious about is Josh Hader. They had him coming out of the bullpen last year, but he was their top pitching prospect, or one of at least. Left-handed guy. He's a starter. I wonder if they make him a starter this year and can really make that push in the rotation. But I think they're going to have to go get 1 or 2 arms. We've talked about guys they can get. Because that's, to me, the biggest thing they need is just shore up their rotation, maybe add a reliever, and they're ready to contend.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that there. Chase Anderson was a very low-owned guy, and I drafted him late in a couple of my leagues. And then same thing with Jimmy Nelson. It's really unfortunate there, and I hope they don't rush him. It sounds like, from everything I read, he's not going to be back probably until July at the earliest. So we'll see what happens there, and if they go get a starter to kind of deepen that staff a little bit. Speaking of deep, is their farm system, especially the outfield. You've got Brinson, you've got Corey Ray, you've got Brett Phillips, among others. Number one, what do they do with all these guys? Do they trade them for a starter, for another bat? I mean, or are they trading Braun to get them some playing time?
And that's the biggest thing is they're going to trade somebody. And that's why I think Domingo Santana has been mentioned just because he's young and he can maybe bring back more than a Braun because Braun costs so much. But Braun still – he's productive. He had a good second half of the season. He would help a team out. I'm not going to knock Braun at all. He's finally getting healthy again. He looked pretty good last year. I'd rather have Santana as a rebuilding team, but maybe a contender would like a Braun. I think they're going to have to move someone, and they've shown they don't really want to move a Brinson or a Ray or those type. They want to rebuild with them. So I think they're going to have to move someone, and that's going to be the interesting part there. Can they make that move take place? Maybe even Brett Phillips. They might end up having to move him. You're right. They have so many pieces, especially in the outfield. They're going to have to, and that's a great way to fill up some pitching needs in a hurry.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I'm very excited to see Brinson. I would hope that he makes the team out of spring training this year, but I think they might take their time there, considering what they think is depth in the outfield in terms of guys they had last year.
Yeah, they took their time with them last year. I don't see them rushing them this year unless a spot opens up for everyday time. That's the only concern. Let's go to Colorado. The Colorado Rockies made a wild card berth last year, 87 and 75, one game better than the Brew Crew, and that was the only difference there. First playoff appearance since 2009. Can they continue to build on this while they have some of the pieces in play?
They certainly can continue to build on it, but you got a career year from Mark Reynolds. You know, LeMahieu was fine the way he is. You got career years from – well, Arenado's been doing it for a couple of years, but definitely a career year from Charlie Blackmon. I mean, he stayed healthy the entire year. They both were MVP candidates. Someone's gonna need to hit 70 homers in Coors for them to win the MVP in that ballpark. Fortunately, that's the case with the voters and whatnot. I think they got really lucky. I mean, they're gonna lose Greg Holland, obviously. You know, decline the option. He's gonna go elsewhere, and they're talking with Wade Davis and others. I would find it hard to believe that any pitching would want to sign other than Mike Hampton in Colorado because of all that money. I mean, it's a tough unless you're older and you may be on your last contract and they're going to give you that money, then you can go do it. But if you have a chance to get another contract down the road, I find it hard to believe they'd go sign. I mean, the pitching wasn't awful. Obviously, Marquez and Freeland were okay considering where they're pitching, but I find it hard to believe that this team is going to be in contention next year again, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and that's a perennial problem in Colorado is that pitching. Like you mentioned, some career years, Gonzalez or
I wrote the wrong
Blackmon and Arenado, MVP seasons. Pargo's likely out of town. What changes would you make or try to make this work?
Well, I think a couple things are going on here. Number one, their top prospect is Brendan Rodgers, and he's a stud. And he's going to be up probably this year, I would think. Trevor Story had a better second half, so he's kind of holding on to it. But, you could possibly deal him. And if you don't contend this year, Charlie Blackmon, you could possibly deal him too, which I could see down the road. And he's another one of those sneaky guys that are outside that Bryce Harper and, Manny Machado free agent range that he's a little bit older. So nobody knows how many years he'll get and at what money. And will it hurt him that he's coming out of Coors? Didn't really hurt Matt Holliday so much when he signed with the Cardinals, but he's much older than Matt Holliday was. So that's something to watch out for sure. It's really a tough situation. They need to just stay healthy. I mean, I think the one guy that was lost there that they signed was Desmond, but another guy is David Dahl. I mean, can he come up and be the guy that we saw at the end of 2016? I would hope he would. He's got to get healthy with that shoulder. So they're deep hitting wise, but I just don't know if that pitching can get it done. I really don't, especially where their bullpen was just so at the end of the year.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how David Dahl pans out. Big-time talent, just hurt all last year. Another guy that was banged up a little bit but had a great year overall, especially finishing strong. I know you're really, really big on him. What are your thoughts on John Gray being an ace at Coors Field?
I love John Gray a lot. I really wish he wasn't pitching in Colorado. I mean, he's actually done pretty well considering all the situations being in Coors. I love him. I love him. I really do, and I'm big on him. It's tough in terms of an ADP to look at it fantasy-wise and tell yourself that I'm going to draft this guy above other guys when he's pitching half of his starts at Coors Field. It really is, but his stuff is there for sure, and I think he's going to be their number one for years to come. Now, whether everyone else behind him can keep up is the question, and I'm not sure they can. It seems like at the beginning of the season, Bubba, you saw different starts from different guys that got them there, and then they'd win other games like 8-7, 8-6, 10-8, things like that. Like you had Marquez, who I think almost pitched a no-hitter. That's right?
I think so, yeah.
I think it was like 2 outs and they hit a lot of double or something like that. But so it was sort of starts like that, and then he'd come out the next start and give up 6 runs. So it was really hit and miss where it seems like they just caught lightning in a bottle, and I just don't see it again this year for the entire team. But I do love John Gray.
Yeah, he is a very, very good pitcher. He's one of the first, I'd say, homegrown talents that can almost pitch consistently at Coors Field they've had in a long time. And so that's good to see. Maybe something's working there.
Yep, agree.
All right, that'll wrap up episode 42. A lot of hot stove talk, season recaps, some Miami Marlins with Craig Mish. Lots of rumors going on. I could sit here and talk about stuff all day with you on this, but we're going to have to save it for another time. So as always, check out the podcast on Twitter at Around Bases Pod, iTunes, SoundCloud, Spreaker. You can find Mo on Twitter at Boston_Mo, and I am on Twitter at BDintric. We'll catch you guys next time.
See ya.